Backwards at 5:37 will bring this meeting to order.
I will second your motion. Did you complete that?
You're doing the minutes for the 9th?
I was doing the minutes for the 9th.
Yeah, I only listed the 9th on here, but I missed the 23rd without putting that on there, so they're both in there.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the minutes of January 9th. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll make the motion that we approve the minutes from the 23rd.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of January 23rd. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
I have a few things that you guys need to go over, but I don't, if you want to have Daniel, he's going to be here to talk about the bike rack and the bike shed. If he wants to, I mean, unless he wants to sit most of the rest of it, it's up to him.
Oh, I have work to do. I can.
Okay.
You can find something to do.
I don't want to kick you out, but I just want you to stay. You want to go ahead and it's up to you.
You mentioned you were going to talk about the bike rack, and I think if we're going to use the bike rack that we were granted at the location we specified in the grant, that we're going to need to pour a pad foundation adjacent south of the existing bus shelter for the length of the bike rack, so we can bolt it down. And then I could also finish putting up the solar panel that would provide illumination and electricity for the light that goes with the bus stop. I have materials and will gather volunteers to do that. I was thinking of building a covered structure, just 2 poles and a little mini like A-frame kind of structure over the bike rack, so the bikes stay dry that are left there over by the bus stop. So it'll be 2 independent structures, not necessarily identical unless we can raise funds to make the second one out of aluminum and plastic, which I don't have. But I'm willing
So
to.
the second structure would be for the solar? What do you mean?
The second structure would be for a bike shelter next to the bus stop. And it could be made out of aluminum and glass.
Oh, I see. 2 separate structures, meaning the bike shed and the bus stop.
Right, or it could be made out of materials that we already have, which is 4x4 posts and post ups and things like that. It's your call, actually, since it's something that is in a visible location, and it would look nice if it was a matching sort of material, but it would be more expensive, so we'd have to raise some funds. We do have the bike rack itself, and we would have to allocate some funds for pouring a pad to secure the rack to the ground, because it's the kind of rack that bolts onto the ground. So that's that. We don't need an immediate decision, but
No, we just wanted to, while we're talking about budget, if we think we need to allocate some money for this project, if it needs to be included in the budget, or if I don't know. I mean, the other thing that I'm a little bit concerned with is that when the bus shelter went up, we didn't really go through any type of zoning.
We talked about
Tom look at it though.
The Tom did all that. Yeah, he did that permitting.
whose property is that?
Well, I'm not really.
No,
I believe that's town right away.
It's right away.
It's town right away.
Yeah, Chris looked into all that.
Yeah.
And made sure that that was the case. And so I'm proposing just south of that, sort of on the way to the fire station, would be another pad of similar size, but sized to accommodate the bike rack, which is rather long for its
And would we be using that bike rack for anything other than people for the bus? I mean,
I'm not anticipating that it's necessarily part of the green bike project, but it could be used for that. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Just whether we need, I mean, at any given time, or how many bikes does the bike rack hold?
Good question.
Quite a few.
8 to 12, I think. I don't know. I have to go look at it.
At any
It's
given
long, but
time,
it's
are we
only got.
likely to have.
It's only got. They're U-shaped devices on
Right.
a rail, on a dual rail. So there's probably 6 or 8 of them. So that would mean 6 to 12 bikes, something like that. Depending on how many you can fit 2 bikes per side of each U. Originally, when we got the grant for the bus shelter, we were supposed to get a bike rack
That
included.
was attachable,
It
right?
never materialized. I could never get information out of anyone for that. I called up the company that made the bus shelter, and they quoted me some astronomical figure for an add-on bike shelter, and we just bagged the whole thing.
Well, we
Gave
can't
up.
add on to that structure anyways, it's
Right.
ours.
Right. So I then submitted a design.
There's the bike shelter.
The bus shelter.
It's not?
It's CRT's
It
bus
is.
shelter.
Yes, it was sort of granted to Putney, but the ownership is retained.
Remains with them. Huh.
Yes. So, long story, I won't go there, but I submitted a design to modify that by extending the roof line to create a covered bike shelter area off the back side, which I thought would have been sufficient, and they just said it would be a liability and not useful and whatever. So they denied my application to modify the structure. So I could try to put together a quote for what it would cost to do it out of matching materials. It's something like 4 by 4 inch square stock aluminum, and the double wall plastic is pretty easy to come by. So.
Do we need a shelter over it?
My goal is to have sheltered bike racks in town at numerous places. The reason for the shelter is so that on rainy days, when you park your bike, especially at a bus stop, if you might park your bike and the weather's fine, you go to Brattleboro and you come back and it's been raining, bikes that are left out in the rain do experience more wear and tear. So as part of the Green Bike Project, my goal was to have sheltered bike locations in at least 2 places. So we expanded the bike shelter over at the co-op, and we built this bike shelter over here.
Right.
So this is really, do we need one over there? Theoretically, no, but I think it would be nice to have a sheltered bike rack location at the bus stop for people. There was talk of bike lockers as well, but they're more expensive and frankly more visually intrusive. So I wouldn't necessarily go that route.
I guess I would be tempted. My only concern is it worth spending the money? I mean, I think it would be too bad not to have something that matched in looks, because it's a pretty sleek unit, and if we didn't match it, I fear it would look a little too homegrown.
Okay, let me put together a quote for materials and get back to you on that.
And then the other question I would have is, does it make sense to put the bike rack in without a shelter and then decide whether we need one? I mean, I understand what you're saying about wanting one, but again, in the interest of not sort of jumbling that area up.
You can put a bike rack in, I'm not sure how much use it'll get without being covered, but it's a fine first step, and we could always reevaluate after that.
That's sort of what I'm wondering, but I don't know. But yeah, I mean, why don't you try and figure out roughly what it costs to match it?
Okay.
Sort of.
Got it.
Sound reasonable?
And as far as the building next door, I have a gentleman who does church windows and has volunteered his time in the future to replace and repair both windows. There's 2 windows on the east, one on the east and one on the west side of the building. So we'll get that repaired in the spring sometime. And I was thinking about what we could do to make that a more usable structure. And one of the things would be a roof, because the roof is in pretty sad shape, and you could see through the roof ridge line that it's missing the roof cap.
What, it's slate, isn't it?
No, it's just metal. It's corrugated metal,
Oh, it
and
is.
it's getting pretty old. So it's possible we can find metal in better shape and repair the roof, or something.
At least get a ridge cap on it.
Or at least get a ridge cap on it. Yeah. I have enough siding to repair some around the edges, and we should do some weed pulling. There's a large invasive on the corner there that could be cleaned up. And the floor is rather uneven, so I was wondering, what options we might have to lay in a cement floor.
Is it a concrete floor in there now?
Parts of it look like they were, but I haven't tried to chip away at it. It's quite uneven in most places. So it's just a cinder block foundation, so I don't know, if anything was really poured or if it's just compacted.
Right.
So, but I would love to get in there in the spring and start putting in work tables and finishing it off, and think about some kind of electricity as an option so that I'm not limited by daylight to be working. But all these are, I'm flexible here.
And this is
It's 100-foot cord out of his office here. We'll reach right across there.
This is so that I
for
could
bike repair.
a bike repair workshop at a central location to store all the bikes.
Yeah.
Because at this point, there's some stored in my house, there's a couple stored at the store, there's some in the basement, and it would be nice to just have them all in one place and throw a lock on the door and be done with it. For the season comes winter time.
So should we be thinking about, I don't know, do you have anything you want me to do with this request, or should we be looking into I didn't do any of this in preparation of the budget this year.
I can try to do some grant funding to alleviate any strain on the budget since things are tight. I know there are grants out there for this sort of thing. If I act quickly, I can probably dig up enough money. But I want to make sure that we're all in agreement about what can be done, like pouring a floor, doing the roof, things like that. So if you'd like, I'll pursue a grant and then sort of submit it to you first for approval.
Yeah,
None of those things are really not detrimental in any way, and it's an improvement to the building that's helpful.
Yeah, no,
For future purposes that we would apply to that building.
I think a roof,
A roof and a floor.
a roof definitely. A poured floor sounds a little luxurious to me, but
Unless you need to walk on it.
the other thing that works really well and would be significantly less is to get a load of Sure-Pack, spread it around, and then run a tamper over it. And that gives you a pretty darn good floor, but it's not a concrete floor.
No, that might be sufficient. I've never tamped it down enough. I did Sure-Pack on the south side to level it off before I put the bike rack in place.
Yeah.
Which actually bolts into the side and lifts up out of the way in case you want to clean up and rake around there and get the weeds out. So it's a slick little bike rack that I had made for us. I'm open to suggestions.
Might have some connections on the concrete.
Well, I was going to say, whatever. I don't know whether, it might be worth pricing. Obviously materials don't want to come out of here.
Well, sometimes it's kind of handy to have a place where you could get rid of a little bit of concrete to chew up the minimum charge thing, if that's something that we could do.
That's a great idea.
Actually, the other, along the lines of the Sure-Pack idea, one thing you could do is, shoot for doing a little, 12-foot by 12-foot paved area and then do Sure-Pack in the other, I'm not trying to limit you, I'm just trying to be reasonable.
And we should be moving the bottles operation out of there at some point.
Yeah.
I've sort of been waiting just because weather came in and got cold.
Yeah.
And it doesn't actually stink any less when it's cold. It's kind of surprising. It's pretty fresh in here.
That should be
Yeah.
mostly better.
What is the basic footprint of that thing? What is it, probably 18 by 30?
I don't know if it's 30, maybe 25.
Yeah.
18, yes, because that's about how wide we had to make the top, the clear roof
Shed part.
Yeah. It's a good structure for doing stuff. Needs a little bit of TLC around the edges. And I haven't caught up with anyone who said they were going to remove the kiosk sign on the side. There was talk of moving it over to the general store.
Yeah.
There was talk of moving it somewhere else. Actually, it probably should go wherever the
By the
recycling
fire
goes.
station.
Yeah. So.
Well, if we did do a bottle building down by the fire station, then it could go on the side of the bottle building.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've reached out enough about the,
Yeah. I'm done.
about, yeah.
Yeah. Just
I've asked a
move
few
it wherever
times
it is.
about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. Thank you for your consideration and your time. And I will be in touch on a grant proposal and run it by you first.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks, Daniel.
Hey.
Okay, so I have just a couple things real quick. Southern Vermont Health Service, which was formerly the credit union and apartment, called us regarding their wastewater and water bill because they were being charged, I think was it 4 years?
This is the Putney Medical Office.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so they were being charged 3? Is that what you just said, Laura? I'm sorry. And was questioning that bill, and when we got talking to them, they had an apartment with 5 bedrooms, and the credit union had 4 employees. The apartment's not there, they're now just a medical office with 8 employees. So they're requesting a reduction in their allocation for water and sewer.
From 3 to 2.
No, actually 3 to 1.
And it's not metered.
It is metered.
It is.
It is metered. The paperwork that came through when they did the change, I looked that up, and I believe it was Craig Stead. It said the necessary allocation for the location was only 120 gallons per day.
Yeah.
Which is less than 1 ERU, but the minimum is 1 ERU.
So Laura and I, we were not quite sure of the process of reducing. So because we come to you guys as commissioners for increasing allocation, we thought we would do it with a decrease as well so that we have a paper trail. Because right now we're having a hard time tracking some of the water and wastewater allocation stuff. So.
And does 1 ERU seem appropriate for their situation?
So
moved.
okay.
I'll second that.
I got it.
It's been moved and seconded to decrease the ERUs being charged to Southern Vermont Health from 3 to 1. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
We have the certificate of highway mileage. We don't have any changes, additions, or subtractions this year for any highway. It needs to be signed by you guys. I would assume a motion to accept the certificate of highway mileage and then sign it.
So moved.
Second that.
And I think it's
Yep.
in the down.
All of us then?
Yeah.
Do we need to vote on the, we need to vote on how much?
Yeah,
we
I
need to
think they just did. Did you just vote?
get? No, we moved it, right?
And
You
you seconded it.
Okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the certificate of highway mileage for the year 2013. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor?
Aye. If you want to slow down.
No, just keep them coming.
The Lister certificate, Kathleen had asked me to put her on the agenda. It was a no appeal or suit pending that needed to be signed, but she found out there is an appeal pending with the state for an appraised value of a property. So she didn't need us to do that anymore.
And what is the Lister certificate? What does that mean?
It just basically certifies the grand list that there is no appeals or suits pending on 2012's grand list. And because there is, we can't sign it. So that's off the list. The gravel pit lease, I put a copy of a couple of the pages from the lease in your packet. Yeah. And there's some highlighted sections. The highlighted sections are what has changed since the last lease that was signed. And the reason for the changes to the lease were some conditions that were put on the permit that the Development Review Board in Dummerston put on their conditions on their permit. So the first section, it basically talks about it goes into further detail about the leased premises, where they are. And I know Josh was at the meeting, I don't know, he can talk more on it if you have questions about that section.
It was basically a question of sort of where an existing fence was between the campground and since, you know, it was established previously the campground would only use a certain portion of it, and Mike had set it up so that it might take more of that, is my recollection, but they basically said, you know, he's not going to do that, so they basically said, well, then let's not include that portion. So it was just sort of reestablishing the fact that the campground was designated at a previous hearing of some sort. So.
The other section that on the next page that I highlighted, which probably is more, I don't want to say more important, but more kind of hits our pocketbook a little bit more, but it's an addition to a 6 cents per cubic yard. And that was also a condition that was put on from the DRB permit. Basically, it's for the reclamation fund. So as you take materials out of there, you're going to pay an extra 6 cents per cubic yard. That money is going to be set aside. With the town of Dummerston is going to be the financial record keepers of this fund. They're going to hold the money, they'll earn the interest on it. And basically the 6 cents was calculated based on what they felt the reclamation was going to cost and how much material was going to be taken out of there.
And so Dummerston will pay a portion of that also?
They pay 6 cents per, yeah.
Right.
So we're all paying 6 cents.
We're each paying 6, or we're paying a total of 6?
We're each paying 6 per cubic yard.
Okay, right. So Dummerston will pay that too, it just goes
Exactly.
directly to a fund.
Yeah. We're paying it to the town of Dummerston when,
As we are.
yeah.
When we take it and Dummerston's paying it,
Yes.
and then what about when Mike uses it also? Because he's not a lessor, or I don't...
Yeah. The lessee, lessors, and any of their assigned removing material, so all of us.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
And then Dummerston simply is acting as the instrument.
Yeah, there's going to be,
carry out.
Yeah.
I talked to Bob Fisher today. He's the one that reworded some of the lease. He is changing a little bit more of this wording just to make it more clear that Dummerston is doing the bookkeeping on it. I don't know what he's adding, but... and then I went through the entire lease. There are small changes here and there. I called Richard, I sent it to him. He went over everything. I went over all the changes that I saw, and he doesn't, you know, some of it is the lessor shall have the privilege instead of the right, and there's some small tweaking of some language, but Richard didn't see anything that made him concerned with any of the changes that they had made. So what they're asking, Bob Fisher was going to go clean up the lease today, just with, like I said, about that Dummerston financial obligation, or financial record-keeping obligation. They were going to have it at the Dummerston Town office for me to go down and sign. I told them that I was having a board meeting tonight and that I was going to ask if you could give me permission to sign that lease, the authority to sign that lease when they have it ready. Or would you like to see it again? Or, I mean, it's up to
Second
you.
that? What the heck?
Easy.
I've got one over here, one here, one there.
It's been moved and seconded to have Cynthia Stoddard represent the town of Putney in the gravel pit lease. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor?
Aye. All right. When's that taking place?
I'm not exactly
Oh, okay.
sure of the date, but as soon as it's ready, within the next few days, I'm assuming. Oh, and the Act 250 hearing was today,
Let's say.
and we were there an hour.
Really? Wow.
They were very impressed with the communication that the, basically Corey, all of us had with the property owners. There was nobody there opposing it. There was a representative from Poplar Commons that was there, and she wanted to hear mostly about the blasting. They recessed.
Chance for
They didn't-
everybody to really.
terminate.
They didn't adjourn the meeting. They recessed it because there's 3 or 4 more things that they need, but they feel like they don't need to have another hearing, that Corey can get them that information, and that they'll be able to make a decision. So it was quick. They were impressed with the amount of legwork that was done prior to everybody going there. I think we'll jump to the town meeting warning, because that's why Emily is here. She wants to. The town meeting warning that you have a copy of in your packet includes both the school and the town. I sent a copy of it to Richard. One thing that I wanted to mention was you, Josh, had a question about the capital plan vote being the order of those.
Yeah.
I called Chris Ryan because I started to look back for a few years to see how we had that, what the order was in the past.
Yeah.
And it was this order, but the first time we voted on the capital plan was last year. So I called him to find out why that was put in there, what prompted that article to be added. And I guess it came from a discussion with John Mudgett.
The capital plan.
The capital
article?
plan itself, yes. And John suggested that we vote on the capital plan to have the voters have a say in what our plan was. What is the equipment that we want to buy? When do we want to buy it? Then the next article is how are we going to pay
To
approve the borrowing?
that
Yeah.
happen. Okay.
So the order was okay. Now, if they vote the capital plan down, I'm not really sure.
Article 19 probably becomes moot.
It either becomes moot or they say we don't
Or
want to buy the
separate.
truck,
Yeah.
but we want to buy the, I don't know. It would be interesting to see.
We all look at the moderator and say, how do you handle this?
I'm not sure how we would handle it, but, so I did check on that, and the order is appropriate. The only other thing I think I changed from the last time we all met was Article 20. I think on the one I showed you last week, it said to see if the town will vote to raise and expend the sum of $750 for the support, and we changed it to appropriate instead of expend. And then the bigger question for me was Article 22. Emily brought in a petition.
Can I just,
Sure.
on Article 21, I know I brought this up before, but it still seems to me like it's a little deceiving that we're not pointing out that that's 10 months. And it's not deceiving, not like it's intentionally deceitful, but I'm just
Should we
wondering whether we should say to see if the town will vote to raise an appropriate amount of money not to exceed $40,000 to support the full-time position of the Wyndham County Sheriff from, September
September or October
whatever.
1st to-
through-
okay.
I would feel more
Yes.
comfortable
I
with
would
that.
say- Okay, well.
Or whatever.
Is that-
Yeah.
No, I would just suggest that one of us, first of all, move it at town meeting.
Right.
And then when discussion opens, have a prepared, piece of
But do you
information.
want
But is there any reason we shouldn't put
No,
that on here too? Just so that it's totally clear that it's 10 months only.
No, there's no reason why it shouldn't be on there as well.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
to
No, no.
support the full-time position of the Wyndham County Sheriff Deputy,
Because it will raise the question, right? And which is fine. Sorry.
should I put the date in there from,
Or for a period of, 10 months?
well, that might be a little, we gotta put the dates in there.
Whatever,
Yeah.
whatever makes the most sense.
Okay.
Right. I would almost say that maybe like we're doing a budget summary handout, maybe a one-page handout on some
this.
background and information.
Hopefully we'll have
This,
something
right, might
carried
be
over.
Next week.
Yeah.
As a reference, right there.
Now, 10 months is from September 1st, right?
Yes.
So is
It
that
runs
first,
through
is that right?
September of 2013, but
Through September of
I think
13?
it does.
So that's only 9 months.
October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July.
I got an extra.
June, yeah. So it must be September 1st. I gotta look at
I
it.
mean, maybe it doesn't matter.
I know it's 10 months.
I just think that it would be,
No, I agree. As much clarity as we can make about that is important, I think. That- right, that this is a one-year solution and that following that it's going to cost more.
I can say
Yeah,
for a period of
assigned to
10
this-
months, starting whatever the date is, ending July.
that sounds great.
Okay.
Does that sound fair?
Yeah, the only thing I was just questioning is if it's actually started October 1st.
Well, the
Like,
problem
yeah,
is
double-
too,
yeah, just
the problem
double
is
check that.
too, is if we end up in a position where Westminster does vote
Right.
that, it starts July 1st. It changes our
That goes
contract,
on that information sheet.
period. So this is up to,
But our grant still doesn't end until
well,
September 1st, so.
well, the contract doesn't end until September 1st. The grant, actually, he's covering the cost now.
Right.
So when they talked to me about the joint contract with Westminster, that was part of the joint contract, is that would then start a new contract July 1st.
Right.
So it's
So in
possible,
fact, we've already expended the grant.
yes. So it is possible that this up to 40,000 would start July 1st if,
And then would it,
I know, it's
and then would 40,000 be sufficient?
40,000 if we went with a joint contract.
Yeah.
40,000 would actually be more than we need because it's like 50-something thousand that,
Okay, well,
That-
maybe Scott's right then, that this should be on the, budget thing instead of being
so leave the wording this way and then there has to be a clear,
some sort of
Clear discussion.
a written addendum.
Okay.
And make sure that we just,
Because you're putting a budget thing, we're having a handout anyway, right?
yes.
The one that you had
Yeah, so
done.
I'll add something to that.
Add to that.
and people need to hear it twice or 3 times to get it. Well, it's a, yeah.
Okay, all right, so I'm not gonna change that article then. And we'll just have to, it's gonna have to be a, well, and apparently if you have you probably don't have last week, so I don't need to tell you, I totally forgot to put in the raise and appropriate amount of money. I forgot that whole article last week when I gave you.
What,
the warning.
Article 22?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably worth having in there.
Jeez.
It needs a period at the end of it.
Okay.
Left that open to add some more there.
That would be true of Article 24 also. A period at the end. I don't know, you may check it for typos.
Okay, so Article 23, a petition was brought to us regarding the tar sands, which I don't know if you guys have all heard, maybe on the news. The wording on the article that I gave you is a little different than what was presented to us. So I want to tell you what was presented to us, and then I'll tell you what Richard said about the article. In the original, in the petition, the wording was, shall the voters of the town of Putney instruct the select board, which is in the first line of the article,
Yep.
to enact the following resolution, and so on. Richard told me that we should change that from instruct to advise because it's a non-binding article. Therefore, the word instruct should be changed because they can't instruct us to do something that we really have no
Can't.
yeah, I mean, it's not within the town business. The other wording that is not on here was there was a number 2 that said, under the now therefore be it resolved, that the town shall require every fuel vendor as a precondition for doing business with town to provide complete and current list of the refinery sources of origin for all fuel the vendor sells, and thereby direct the town's purchases as much as possible towards vendors whose refinery sources do not use any material derived from tar sands. That was in there. I took it out. Richard, I was uncomfortable with that. It changes the way we do business with vendors. The way we purchase our oil is most of the time through, this year we did an agreement with the school because we did a bulk purchase. They actually did most of the negotiating. And so he advised me to take that one out. Other than that, all the wording is the same as what you guys have in front of you.
And it's up to, we can legally change the petition even though that's how it comes to petition
Yes.
to us?
Yeah.
Okay.
The choices are to leave the article as was presented, change the word instruct to advise, and take out number 2, which is what Richard had advised that we do if we're going to leave the article on the warning. And then obviously the third option is always you can decline a petition.
So there were 5?
There were 5.
And 2 came out. Can I
Yeah.
just look at it?
Yeah. Did you want, I did call her today and let her know all this so that this isn't a surprise to her.
But the 350.org, people might be aware of, Bill McKibben's organization came up with this petition, and I carried it out. I thought it was a long one. I would have done a shorter one. Nonetheless, he was speaking today up at the State House about the urgency in general of our climate change and the urgency of not supporting and doing our best to discourage the tar sands, because if that is excavated, then it's game over for climate change. So it's a very, very urgent issue. And particularly when you talk about removing the number 2 part, if it isn't part of our town plan now, we need to begin to think about these things. And how can it become part of the town's business to make sure that the sources of our oil or of our energy. I'm not going to, I'll be glad to get the general article on the town voting. I think 35 other towns will be voting on this as well. I don't know if they're having these same issues with the wording.
Yeah, I do know that we have an email listserv that town clerks and towns, this was going around the listserv, and there was all sorts of ways they were handling it. Some of it had to do with the length of the article and did they want to put the whole article on, and some of them were taking out the section that listed the 1 through 5 and giving it as a handout. There was all sorts of ways that they were dealing with it.
But the 1 through 5, as we went over it, was the first part, the whereas part, is the information part, and the 1 through 5 is what we're resolving to do. So it didn't make sense to make that the information. It would
right, and that's why when I put it together, I said I'm going to put the whole thing on there, and then we'll talk to. I was a little uncomfortable with number 2 just because I know the way that not saying that can't change in the future, but the way that we purchase our oil right now.
Maybe this year you could find out. You could start making those inquiries.
And I've started, I called the crew.
Is that information you may know or you may have found out, is that information readily available from any given fuel vendor, and or are they willing to share it?
I called our fuel vendor today, and he wanted to see what it said because he wanted to make sure he gave me the appropriate response.
Right.
He has information, but I haven't gotten it yet. He was going to email me a response. He was very, he knew exactly what I was talking about, and he So until I get that, I don't know.
Yep. And may I share while I'm here, I don't know what access you have to the same information I have, but there is a farmer over in the southwestern part of the state who is farming for the fuel for all his needs for the entire farm, for the tractors, for the electric, and so forth, on 45 acres of farming sorghum and canola. So there are very prudent ways we can move forward to get oil. I don't want to just say that we can't have oil.
Yeah.
There's just, we have to move to a different way. And this, what I found, I'm so burnt out on getting petitions, I can't even say. But a lot of people did not know. This was more an educated thing for a lot of people who had never heard of the tar sands, didn't know. And that's how these things happen, is the general population is just goes under their radar. And then here we are, a fix. So.
I'm not adverse to number 2 being on there, primarily because all it says is thereby direct the town's purchases as much as possible toward vendors whose refinery sources do not use any material. It doesn't say we can't. Right, exactly. I mean, none of this says we can't, but that would be my opinion. But I don't know. I mean, I think anything we can do to limit the use of oil from tar sands is a good thing. Is this tying our hands? It doesn't sound like it to me, so I don't know. But I'm not going to. If others are more comfortable with it being 1 through 4, well, of including it, that's sort of the way I feel about it. I think if it said that we couldn't purchase from sources that included, because they're, for whatever reason, including the fact that there may not be a vendor in the area that doesn't get at least some small percentage from the tar sands. I have no idea.
From what I understand, they haven't reversed the flow through that pipeline that's going across the Northeast Kingdom yet.
Right.
And that's what we're working on, do we and can we stop that? It goes right from Montreal through to Portland, Maine.
Right.
So right now it's flowing this way, and if it flows that way, it's more corrosive, and they've already had, it's over the wetlands up there, so.
So do you know where the vendors in this area, do they get it from that?
No, I don't think they do. I don't think they do, actually.
Okay.
Actually, the whole plan of the tar sands is to export this dirty, gritty stuff that's really corrosive, and they're building that XL pipeline right through to Texas, and they're running into opposition, but they're just plowing over it, and they're doing eminent domain. So the reason why they want to reverse the flow over this older pipeline is because they're having trouble going that way. It's not going to increase any jobs in the U.S. They just want to transport over the U.S., making us at risk. They've already had some awful environmental things happen with it because it eats away. So that on top of the fact that they shouldn't be doing it in the first place because we're at a critical time, we wouldn't be seeing that oil. It would be going out anyway.
Yeah.
So in your discussion with Richard, there wasn't anything that he felt was illegal or incorrect about this. It's just sort of a policy statement.
Or putting us in a position of enforcement of something.
He was
I'm sure this has been reviewed by other people.
He was uncomfortable with that language of, basically, basically it's a non-binding article. It's advising the select board of what the town would like to see us. So, he wasn't.
Well, I think it's part of what your role will be further down. If you can, for example, purchase the biofuel that's coming out of Greenfield, and then you'll be asked, do we want to move our burners over? These are things that are going to fall into your lap more and more. Can we as we move over to different sources. So just suggesting it in terms of tar sands that aren't even coming through, and I'm not an expert on that, I'm just telling you what I understand. It just kind of begins to open up that door for your role in the future.
No, I think it's fine the way it is. The fact that it's not binding,
Right.
you know, I think it's...
And I think it forces whoever to think about it, which probably isn't a bad idea.
Right, I think it would be helpful to know.
We might as well.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly, so...
So I can change, I'm going to change the word instruct to advise, but then put number 2 back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Cynthia,
Yeah,
for
I
calling
think
me.
number 2 is a problem.
No, it doesn't. We should know where it's going from. Because if that becomes a bigger issue over time and starts happening, then we should know. But, yeah.
And while I'm here, may I use a moment, because I've been going up to the legislature, shall I take another time, come back?
Ask Brad. I'm fine.
I'm working on developing a policy, perma-farm policy, what I'm calling perma-farm policy at the State House, which is establishing, we've heard of eco-villages and sustainable farming, and we see them, but what we need for really getting the kind of food security that we're needing in terms of the climate change issues is to have these perma-farms, and what they are simply are, a single one is about 3 acres in size, and it has a single family on it that is willing to cultivate it, and that it's a tax-free, in perpetuity piece of land. Now, a community, perma-farm community, can have maybe 10 families on like 40 acres with some buildings in common. It's probably more applicable to the dairy farm area up in the top of the state and over in Rutland. But nonetheless, we're looking for a goal of 25 of them in 5 years. But this is already being done over in other countries. And Russia is producing more of its produce from these small farms. And it's, as you know, agriculturally more beneficial for the earth, and also produces 2 times as much. And so it will create a stability as we make this transition. So I just wanted to share that I'm looking for legislators who will deal with these are zero waste, sustainable type of communities, and we'll have to deal with the human manure. Instead of defiling our water with our waste, we've got to move to this dry composting system plus getting the heat. And that's something we'll have to deal with legislation. So while I'm here, since I'm not often here, I thought I'd share that I'm doing that. And the industrial hemp is moving forward. Jeanette White is introducing some legislation, and I'm talking with Bill Sorrell about the NAFTA issue. In other words, we are a captive market to import all things of industrial hemp. And I won't go into why it's a cornerstone and why we need it. I hope you know. But if we can get our state to challenge the federal prohibition on this industrial commodity on the basis that we need to be able to export as others are exporting to us, then we can follow the model that Canada and England and other people are already using to grow. And again, it's a seed crop. It's a crop that can build a highly incident houses and so forth, and our cotton industry is using too much water and so forth. So those are the pieces of work that I'm doing, and it's moving forward up there. May I say goodbye?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you.
Can you do it? Do you know how to take it? Don't go over it, you have to.
So for everything else is okay on the morning, you think? don't have any other things to say about it. The only thing is that I need you guys to sign it, but I need a copy I need to change that. We can do that at that meeting, if you guys want to vote on it, and then I can quickly change that and sign it so you don't have to come back in.
Move that we accept the warning for the 2013 Sutton Town Meeting as presented with the correction to Article 24.
23.
I will second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the warnings for the 2013 Putney Town and Putney School District meeting with the correction to Article 23. Is there any discussion? So now we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
And while I'm thinking about that sheriff, that meeting is the 4th, February 4th,
Which is Monday.
Monday at the school at 6:30.
Does anybody know, and it's irrelevant to this, but if the school board doesn't have a full slate, do we appoint a school
No,
board member?
it used to be that the school board would put a candidate forth, and the select board would basically rubber stamp that. I recall, let's see, we had a situation like that. We had a resignation, and Doug Harlow came back to fill in.
So we would have to, technically, we do the appointment?
No, not anymore. No.
So now it's just the school board deals with it? Okay.
Don't check that.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that they are capable.
Do you know whether were petitions filled out for all the school board positions? Do you know?
I do not know.
You don't know?
So I put another capital plan in your packet because, well, last time you approved it, and I got thinking about this capital plan, and under the sidewalk tractor, under 1314, we're really not spending 20,000 in 1314. So I changed it and noted down at the bottom that we're purchasing it, and the repayment starts for the borrowing in FY15.
Why wouldn't we?
Yeah, why wouldn't we?
Because we would be buying it probably, September, October of 2014. And if we approve, if the borrowing gets approved, we wouldn't have a payment due on it until
The
next fiscal year.
Wouldn't we be buying it in 2013?
Yeah.
September of 2013?
Right, so then we would be paying for it, in September of 2014, which would be, wait a minute. If we purchase it in September of 2013,
Right.
we wouldn't have to make a payment until September of 2014, which would be
Is that
part of
correct?
the next, yes. Yeah, because the borrowing that we just did is not due until we borrowed in January, the payment's not due until January of next year. So it's a full year.
Okay, right, so the agreement and whatnot to buy it, the actual purchase takes place in 2013, but there's no payments made until
Right.
fiscal year 2014, so which one gets the money?
Payments made.
That sounds like an accountant's quiz to me.
Yeah, really. It's beyond me. I mean, why wouldn't we? So,
I guess it would be right. I mean, mostly, for a business, you'd want to be able to write it off, as soon as possible.
Right, but
Right, but that's.
I mean, in
What's the benefit?
2014, we would get the $100,000 if we borrow for the purchase of the equipment of $100,000. Then the next cycle is when we start paying on that $100,000.
Why don't we start paying right away? I'm confused.
Because the payment's not due for a year, the first payment.
Why is that?
I-
How does that work? That's when,
Well, and what's
when
it-
who's funding it?
Well, but you know, I think why you're confused is normally our first, we've been paying basically the first payment of a piece of equipment out of the capital
In a
fund.
lump sum, right.
So typically, you've been seeing, if we purchase a piece of equipment, like last year, we bought, or this year we bought the dump truck or something.
Right.
So in that first year, it shows $20,000, but that actually was $20,000 of direct capital,
Payment,
yeah.
right.
When in fact, then we only borrowed the extra above
Right.
that. It is different than what you guys have been used to seeing, because we've typically paid
But
for
who-
some of that equipment in the year we're purchasing it.
I'm not questioning whether it's right or wrong. I'm just wondering who is willing to wait a year on payment. I mean, Chittenden doesn't wait a year. We would borrow this from Chittenden, presumably.
Right, they're waiting a year on the gravel pit.
They are? So we
Yeah, because
borrow the money.
I looked at the loan today when I got in here, because I'm like, if we buy this tractor, when are we gonna have to make the first payment? So I looked at the gravel pit loan. It was loaned to us January 20, whatever, 20, and the first payment is due next
So it's
January.
a payment deferred loan. That's weird.
Is that right? Oh, I was gonna say, you were looking a little confused too. It's always been that
That's
way.
the way we've been doing it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think you haven't noticed before, because that first payment, or that,
It's just a chunk of money.
it's just a chunk of money that you've budgeted in the capital. So in other words, we're borrowing for the entire purchase instead of
Paying a lump,
paying a small portion and, yeah.
Right. And we want to do that.
Well, we are
We
paying,
don't want to pay 20,000 up front.
no, I don't,
There's no value in it.
I don't know why there's no value in it. I mean, it's a piece of equipment that should last 15 years.
Right.
And we are purchasing the truck outright. So we
Right.
are spending $45,000 on the
Yeah.
truck and not borrowing any money.
Right. Which
So-
is- Then we're not paying interest, which is.
Yeah, it is.
So it's one or the other. Yeah, okay. So what
So-
do you need, a motion to amend this?
Yeah, to accept the revised, I don't know how you want to say it.
I will make a motion that we accept the proposed general fund capital replacement plan as amended to delay payment for the sidewalk tractor until 2014-15 fiscal year.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to accept the revised capital plan for 2013, 2014, to basically push the sidewalk payment out a year. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, proceed to vote. All those in favor? Aye.
So the copy of the budget that I gave you, there's no changes from the last time. The total is still the 1,756,174, which is a 1% increase. The reason that I kind of had you guys push it off to this week from last week was there was some question about legal fees and a possible unemployment claim. And I did do some calculating of what I predict our fund balance, well, I don't want to say predict, estimate our fund balance to be at the end of this fiscal year, which is on, there is a spreadsheet in there. It should be, yeah, okay.
Right.
So we ended the year in June with $67,000. Our revenues to date were 1.7. I anticipate another 248,000. Expenses to date were 1.4, and I anticipate another $588,000, leaving us with $52,000 at the end of this year. Some of that comes from our wages are a little lower. Some of the lines I didn't, like a $10,000 contracted service in the highway, I didn't post any anticipated there because I just don't know. So I'm confident that we are going to end the year in a surplus. Do I think it will be enough? I don't think it's going to be enough to help us with the fiscal year 14 budget, but I feel like it's enough to cover if we decide to do some legal fees or if we have an unemployment claim that we need to pay. So I don't...
And or a bike shed.
Right, it's going to keep us from going into any kind of spending.
Right. I feel, I'm confident that, I think those things can be covered with, some savings in some other areas. So I did not do any, anticipated increase in those areas in the proposed budget. So the budget that's before you is the same amount that I showed you last time. And Howard did call me about this budget today, so paid for tomorrow. I told him it hadn't been voted on yet, and we were still working on it tonight.
That kind of thing doesn't matter.
I know, but...
Either that or you'll get a call later.
Unless you guys have anything you want to add or subtract, or I think I totally...
And you would like us to come out with that fund balance? I mean, it's not necessary, because we could...
Right.
We could reduce taxpayer input but not worth doing.
Well, my concern is that moving target of the property taxes.
Right.
And when I did this estimate, I posted it as if we were collecting everything we billed this year. Could we end up with more? I hesitate to say it. I think we're going to end up with more because I think our delinquent tax collection will improve, and that deferred tax number is going to change this year, which will only add to our revenue, but it's such a moving target that...
Right, our margin for error is rather small.
Yeah,
I'm just asking.
I would love to say, yeah, let's use some of it, because I'm super confident that that's where we're going to end up, but...
Yeah. No, on a budget this size, it's not a huge number.
I mean, it might save, what did I say, 22,000 isn't heavy.
Right, so it would be 2%, a couple cents.
Yeah, right now we're up, what did I say, 4 cents, or, well, if article, the sheriff changes, it'll be 6 cents, but, yeah, I mean, would it save a little? Yeah. But am I confident enough to say...
We don't have to worry about it? No. Yeah. No, plus if we have some other expenses. Okay.
I'm confident enough in it that I can say that these other
this
things...
might happen.
I'm confident enough to say that I don't think we need to add anything to those other lines, which I was concerned about, that because most of this, if it happens, is going to be within this fiscal year that we're already in.
Right.
So it's affecting our current budget, but
well, you're ready to entertain a motion?
Sure, bring it on.
I'll make a motion that we approve the proposed FY14 general fund budget
Second that.
as presented.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the proposed fiscal year 2014 general fund budget as presented. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have a question just to see if you guys remember the discussion. The second phase of the sidewalk, the scoping study, we're sharing the cost with Landmark. Do you guys remember where this money for the town was going to come from?
You said you could come up with
It's right here.
it. Isn't that what that little number you just talked about?
I couldn't, just seeing if you have a recollection. If not, then I will.
Find it. Did we think maybe some Edwald? I can't remember, but I don't know whether there's any Edwald available.
Not that much.
No, I know, but I think that was part of the discussion. I don't know whether we.
All right, well, I'm going to come back to you with that at some point because we need to cover that cost.
Did we talk capital fund?
I know the
I
capital.
know we've mentioned it.
I know the capital fund was used to cover some of the recent construction. That was like 13,000. But I didn't know. I mean, I'll call Chris and talk to him. But before I did that, it's gonna come up. I mean, we've got a bill from RSG right now that actually is about $3,000 over what our contract was. So I'm in the works of talking to them, but right now it's about 11,000 that we have spent.
From each of us. We're splitting it 50-50 with Landmark, is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what happens now if I don't know why that bill is over the contract, but just kind of making you aware that I'm going to have to come back and ask for a vote on where we're moving that money from. I don't really know where to move it from yet. If anything comes to you in the middle of the night, then let me know. Financial report that I worked on today was basically this fund balance stuff. Daniel's going to come back. There are no warrants, you said, Laura? No. Daniel's going to come to us with the RFP for the solar. It'll be at the next meeting. Other than that, no, anything else. Next meeting is the 13th. We're on a... Get through.
And you know that we had somebody run.
Oh, I heard that.
Who's that?
Steve Head, the guy that I mentioned. Nice guy, 2 kids at school, his wife's a music teacher. He was the farm manager for the SIT, Sustainable Farm Program. They had cut that budget, so he's not doing that anymore. So he's doing farming on his own as well as a variety of other things for the time being, but very nice, very level-headed. Did you chat with him at all? Or not really?
Yeah.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah. He's fine. He said something about he had been on the school board a couple times. I said, oh, that's a piece of cake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, seems very nice. All right, so I will go in and fix this. You guys can sign it, don't have to come back. Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds good.
We don't have an executive session here.
Nope. No, I meant to take that off of there for tonight.
So we'll release PCTV maybe?
Yeah.
So,
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.